Hi guys, my name is Rahilly. I'm a senior at Albemarle High School, and this is my second year tutoring with our wonderful tutoring center. We're from Charlottesville, Virginia, and right now we're currently on a retreat. So I'm presenting to you guys virtually, but I also have a couple friends in the room watching me. So have any of you guys ever taken an art class? You can either raise your hand in the chat if you're in Zoom or just raise your hand in person. All right, perfect. We have a lot of people in person. I can't view the chat right now, but if any of you have taken an art class, that's really great. The first thing we're going to do to start this activity out is do a little exercise with drawing a self-portrait. It's just a really quick drawing, so you don't have to make it like extremely good. You could also draw someone around you, or if you're on the Zoom, feel free to turn on your camera and you can pick someone from the grid to draw, just as like a little team building exercise. And I'll put a 4-minute timer on the clock. So just Are we all trying Jocelyn? Yeah. So silly. I draw you. You have like, I think 3 minutes or, yeah, 3 minutes left. Share this so that you're looking at it. All right. Is that okay? We can really both play you, but okay, so it's been about 4 minutes. So for the next activity, if you're with me in person, I'd like for you to turn to an elbow partner and give them, hold on, sorry, one piece, one thing you think they did really well with. You're here with me virtually. I'd ask the moderator if it would be okay if we could set up some, maybe like 2 breakout rooms so people can share in those rooms, just for a few minutes.
Oh, would you like me to go ahead and create the breakout rooms? Claire, I think we only have about 4 people. Do you want us to do a breakout room?
It's just that people you can just share in the chat, or maybe turn your cameras on so everybody can see each other's drawings and then share in the chat. All right, so it sounds like we've given some feedback in person to each other. I don't know if anybody wants to share their drawings virtually, but if not, that's totally okay. I get it. It can be really like anxiety inducing to share something like that for the first time. But just in person, would anybody like to share out some feedback that they heard from another person that they thought was really interesting? Yeah?
I heard like some actual constructive feedback that maybe have shoulders be a bit more anatomically accurate, but also that I should have more.
So if you didn't hear that because you're here virtually, what this person said was that she heard that that the muscles in their drawing could have been a bit bigger and that the shoulders could have been a bit bigger just to improve it proportionally. Anything else? Yeah?
Amalia said that I drew my face a little too long, which is good to know because sometimes it's really hard to get the proportions like of your actual head right. So
yeah,
good feedback.
And if you didn't hear that virtually, it was just someone saying that maybe improve on the proportions of the head next time, which I struggled a lot with when I draw. So to lead into my next slide, that might have felt a bit uncomfortable for some people. I know when I started doing art critique professional or just like in a higher level, I was so nervous at first. I think the word critique itself has a very negative connotation. You feel like you're just going to hear like flaws about your piece and everything that's wrong with it. So it can be really anxiety inducing. And I think this is what a lot of people feel when they first step into the peer tutoring room, especially if they're less comfortable with academics. Maybe they haven't been writing for a very long time or English isn't their first language. So they might feel like they're unprepared when they first step into the room. And it can be really anxiety inducing and nerve wracking. What helped me get more comfortable with having other people critique my own art has been having a repetitive structure to sort of fall back on. And this has also helped me when I've been critiquing other people's work. So the structure that I use, and I think a lot of artists use when looking at other work, is called the Feldman's 4 Steps of Art Critique. I think it was developed by either an art professor or just someone in the art world named Feldman. And so this is what he says. The first step for this should be description, and it's completely non-biased, just like a first sort of point of view, first impressions, description of what you're looking at. And it's really good for all these 4 steps to really try to have an active conversation with whoever's work you're looking at about the piece instead of just saying it in your head. Really try to vocalize what you're seeing. And this lets the artist know what people see, what first sticks out to them when they're looking at a piece. It's also really good because it lets you like take a step back and take a moment to intake everything you're seeing rather than just jumping right into feedback without really understanding the piece. The next step is analysis. These first 2 steps are supposed to be completely unbiased, so you're not saying, oh, like, I don't think this is good yet, or maybe you wouldn't say that at all. You're just saying like what you see. So step is kind of similar to the first, except you're using the elements of art and the principles of design in it. So these include things like lines, shapes, colors, textures, and values. And you're just kind of talking about what jumps out to you from these. So like, for example, if you're looking at like a Picasso painting, you could say like, wow, you're using a lot of like geometric shapes in your pieces, and you're using like usually a lot of warm tones. It's helpful to be very specific. And so just being like, oh, I liked your line usage. Like say like, oh, I liked how you used really curvy lines or really straight lines, or like I liked how you used cross-hatching shading or something like that. So try to be like very specific. If it's just in one area of the piece, point that out too, because just I like the colors can be, or just I see colors can be kind of like, okay. So the next step is interpretation, which involves connecting what you've seen from your first impression and the analysis you just went through of the like technical skill of their work and putting it together to create like a central theme for what their work is. So like if you see like if you're looking at a painting and your first description was, oh, I see a man, and then during the analysis you're like, oh, there were a lot of like cooler tones, you could say, I think that this depicts a man who's going through some hardship because he seems pretty sad, or something like that. This is a really good step, especially when you're having a conversation with the artist, because it lets the artist know what message their piece is being told to the audience, and it lets you know what their intended message was. So that puts us into the last step, which is evaluation. This is kind of what I think people think of when they hear the phrase art critique, because this is the most like feedback based portion of it. So this is where you say, I think your usage of color was effective in portraying a mood in the piece, or I think your usage of line was really great for telling a story. Or you could say like, I didn't really see a connection between these 2 elements of the piece. This is really where you're trying to get the artist to either improve on something or just voice your feedback on it. And also, if during the interpretation step, you said that you thought their piece was about something and they said it was about something totally different, you can offer ways to improve that in the future and make sure that their voice is being heard through whatever they've created. All right, so where is this useful? An example I like to give, because I think a lot of people are really familiar with it, is like Impressionist painters such as Claude Monet. I think what Claude Monet is really famous for is like when you look at his piece from far away, it looks really put together and it looks just like really synthesized. And then if you look at it up close, you can see like a lot of the colors aren't really that blended, or it's a lot of really individual and pronounced brush strokes that from far away look cohesive, but when you go closer, come closer, they look a little bit more like scattered. And I think that by using Feldman's method, critics are able to pay more attention to this and like how, because if you're just looking at the piece from really far away and just looking at it from like a one time and immediately looking for things, you might not notice how the colors are used, how the lines are used, and what the brushstrokes look like. But really taking the time to analyze and communicate everything to the artist would allow you to appreciate it more. So how does this impact artists when tutoring, or how does this impact artists? I was fortunate enough to be able to interview an art student at Mary Washington for this presentation, and I asked him what he thinks that art critique has done for his work. And one thing he said that really stuck out to me was, the main thing critique has done for me is made me feel closer with my peers, because a large portion of critique is suggesting what you think artists should do next. So I think that by participating in critique as both a subject and a respondent, artists can be more collaborative with their pieces, and it really creates a community, which I think is what peer tutoring is about in a way. No one should have to learn alone. Everybody should always have a resource, and critique really is a resource. And you might not think about it when first starting out art because, like I said, it seems really intimidating at first, but it is a really useful thing, and it can be something that you bond over rather than something that draws you apart. Um, it also allows you to see your work through a fresh set of eyes. Sometimes, if I've been working on a piece for a really long time, I get really sick of it, and I just don't want to look at it anymore because I don't know what needs to be improved. But letting someone else take a look at it really adds a new perspective. So another impact I've seen a lot in myself and in the student is comfortability. He also said that art critique makes it easier to change up my own work. Having your work critiqued and critiquing others' work forces you into the position of the viewer and helps you consider how well the piece is working as a whole. I thought this was really good. I thought this was a really interesting quote, especially because I know as an artist, sometimes when I'm working on something, I'm like really attached to it, even if it isn't working. And I'm like, oh, well, you don't get it. I think it's great. But like sometimes if it doesn't translate to the viewer, then it doesn't necessarily need to be in the piece. So having that repetitive critique has really helped me sort of be open to new ideas and new concepts. Um, it allows you to become more accepting of change, and you get less awkward with it as you go on because you have a set structure to fall back on. So outside of art, which is why we're here, recently I've been trying to apply these steps to tutoring, um, to give like helpful feedback, especially with writing, because I've gotten really lost with tutoring writing recently. Doing these has helped me remember purpose in writing. I think sometimes when we look at a client's piece or a client's writing, all we see is a rubric that we need to mold their voice into. So it's really helped me kind of remember that the purpose of writing is communicating ideas. It's not getting a grade in a class. And sometimes, especially if students haven't had that much academic writing experience, they need to remember the building blocks of writing, which is communication, rather than like some ideas that were taught in English class for a rubric. I've also branched out from just using this with writing and started using it with required readings for history and English. At my school, we have World History 1 and World History 2, which you have to take your freshman and sophomore year. And you have to read a lot of like old English texts, which I think are really hard to read at first. And it's hard to really understand everything. But using these steps that really breaks it down for students and helps them understand the meaning of the text, which is the most important thing they should be getting from it. And it also lets them understand, like even in like AP Lang, if you're doing rhetorical analysis, having that analysis step highlights the rhetorical strategies they're using. Also, it facilitates more productive conversations with clients. Having that interpretation step really helps you try to understand their thoughts and what they're trying to communicate through each other's work. In my tutoring center, we say that tutoring is an active conversation between two people where both people's thoughts are visible. So I think this really clears up everybody's thoughts for each other because the student can see what a teacher might see when they first look at their work, and the tutor can see what the student wants the work to be like. It also has helped me sort of view writing as a more fluid method of expression, and I think it allows clients like personality to shine through their writing a lot more, and like their voice, which I think is really important, being able to write in your own voice, especially as you go through high school more, and if you're going to college, writing a college essay, you really want it to be in your own voice and you want it to sound like you. So it's really helpful for that. So what I thought we'd do now is look at an example piece of writing and try to put these steps of critique to work, to sort of look at, maybe it is Emily Dickinson, so I guess we're critiquing Emily Dickinson. So maybe something she can improve on, or just understanding what she's written. If you needed a reminder of the steps, I sort of have some guiding questions. So for describe, what are your first impressions? For analyze, what writing techniques does the author employ? For interpret, what message do these techniques synthesize to create? And for evaluation, how effective are these techniques in conveying this message? So just to start, I think it's kind of small. Can you guys see it okay? Okay, would anybody like to read it? Okay, I can read it if nobody's feeling comfortable right now. Do you want to read it?
Sure. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life that aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain.
Thank you. All right, so for the describe portion, I like this to be like very active. So what were your first thoughts just hearing one initial read or listening to it one time? What do you think the artist or the writer is saying? Zoe? Yeah. Yeah, if you didn't hear that because you're on Zoom, Zoe just said she's saying she wants to help people in life, which I think is really true. What now for analysis? What writing techniques does the author employ? For argumentative, I like to talk about rhetorical strategies, but for something like poetry, I think like figurative language and just like if you've taken AP Lit, literary strategies and techniques. I'll go to in the chat too. One thing that really jumped out to me when writing techniques was she alludes to helping a fainting robin, which I think is a really good way to get, which like, if you think of like a bird, they're kind of like almost like small. We're a lot bigger than them. They can feel kind of weak. So you're really like helping them by, as a bigger creature, by helping them onto their nest. So what message do you get from this piece for interpretation? Yeah.
I think it's kind of like about what she deems as the most important part of human lives,
Mm-hmm.
like affects on others.
Yeah. And obviously, we can't speak to her right now and ask her, what did you mean when you wrote this poem? But I think she would say something similar. So finally, for analysis, how effective do we think that the techniques she employs, like her word choice, what she alludes to, her imagery, that kind of thing, are in conveying her message? Good? Yeah. I think they're really good. Yes?
I really wish it would rhyme. Like I could see that vain and pain rhyme, but reading it out loud, it didn't sound as good.
Yeah.
The rhyming.
Yeah, I see that. Especially because it's poetry. It's nice when it rhymes.
It does, yeah. I feel like that would have made the whole thing more impactful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that feedback. Mm-hmm.
There's something about this, the part where she said, I shall not live in vain. Sometimes I feel like it's like as if she's kind of like holding herself back and she's trying to like get out of that hole. Kind of
Yeah.
like walking the road or in person. So it's kind of like she's feeling like she's challenging herself. Kind of like, yeah, it's just kind of like being out of that hole, like trying to be something before, kind of like not having that kind of feeling of you're incapable of doing nothing. So, so kind of like added to that. Like, it depends on how, like, your personality, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're a shy person, kind of like a person. That is something that I can relate a lot. Like, understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that relatability I think is a really great aspect in poetry that I think adds like a deeper layer to the poem. So I really appreciate that too. All right, so thank you for your feedback and for participating in this activity. Just to recap what I've been talking about, we have Feldman's 4 steps of art critique, which are description, analysis, interpretation, and evaluation. And I was talking about applying these to writing and maybe a little bit of reading and history too. So some tips for doing this are thinking of writing as a fluid way of communication, especially even in academic, like argumentative pieces, you can still think of it as they're trying to present their opinion. And emphasize conveying ideas rather than entirely just grammatical structure. So obviously, sometimes grammar mistakes can like sort of cloud the meaning of writing, especially if it's like there's a lot of typos or something like that. It can be really hard to read. But what I've been trying to do by using these 4 steps is just make students more comfortable with voicing their opinions and having their own unique style be heard. Also, it helps practice develop writing skills for the tutee and the tutor. As I've worked with these 4 steps, I've started to apply them to my own writing, which has been really beneficial to me in growing what I'm trying to voice. Because often I think in writing, I have a really hard time just getting straight to the point. So when I've applied these 4 steps, I've sort of been more conscious of that. And for the tutee, having this experience with a way to sort of look at writing and a structure to look at writing, I think can be really beneficial because it lets them do it on their own time. So maybe it lets them become more independent. All right, does anyone have any questions? And I'll pull up the chat too.
How did you come up with the idea to use this system for peer tutoring?
I started tutoring when I was a junior, and I started taking AP Art also when I was a junior, kind of at the same time. And so I got introduced to this through my art class, and I was just starting tutoring, and I was really getting stressed out trying to tutor writing because sometimes I didn't know where to start, and I didn't know how to talk to students about trying to convey ideas better, but just starting both things at the same time kind of intertwined them in my mind because I was doing art critique for the first time, with a structure, and I was tutoring for the first time. So I just started employing those techniques in my work.
Do you think of this process at all while you're writing, or do you try to just write something and then critique it later?
Originally, I was just doing it where I would write something and then critique it later. But I think just the main ideas of the steps have just gone into my mind while writing. So if I'm writing something for AP Lit or something, I think, how would an AP grader interpret this piece? Which I think some people might just do on their own subconsciously. All right. If there are no more questions, this is my contact in case anyone wants to email me if you're in the Zoom chat separately, because I know it can be kind of daunting to speak up sometimes, especially virtually. I remember Zoom school. But thank you so much for coming to my presentation.